Hello, survivors. Thanks for joining us today. Before we begin, if you enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot. Also, tell us in the comments which city you're listening from. It's great to see how far our community reaches. Now, let's start the story. The grinder chewing up eucalyptus branches for the koalas was usually the loudest thing at 7 a.m. But that Tuesday morning, the sirens were already competing. Distant, sure, like they always were on the edge of the city. But more of them. Persistent. I didn't think much of it. Just hauled another bag of feed towards the primate house. The familiar smell of hay and something vaguely musky filling the crisp October air. Oak Creek Wildlife Park wasn't the biggest zoo, not the fanciest. But it was home, kind of. More home than my cramped apartment anyway. My name's Leo. And for the past 2 years, groundskeeping and general animal support had been my life. It wasn't glamorous. Mostly cleaning enclosures and moving supplies, but being around the animals had a certain peace to it. Usually. Sarah, head of the primate section, was already checking the locks on the orangutan enclosure. Her brow was furrowed tighter than usual. "Hear all that?" she asked, nodding towards the city skyline just visible over the trees. "Hard not to," I replied, dropping the feed bag. "Sounds like a rough morning out there." "TV in the break room mentioned some kind of flu outbreak hitting hard," she said, fiddling with a padlock. "ERs are slammed. Hope it doesn't spread this way." She always worried about the animals first, especially her apes. Gorillas, chimps, orangutans, they were susceptible to human respiratory stuff. Ben, head of security, rolled up in his golf cart, the radio on his shoulder crackling intermittently. Ben was ex-military, all buzz cut and permanent frown lines. He saw the world in terms of perimeters and threats. "Morning," he grunted, eyeing the feed bags. "Make sure all non-essential gates are locked down today, Leo. Got a weird feeling." "What kind of weird feeling?" I asked, hefting the bag again. "Just noise," he said vaguely. "Too much chatter on the emergency bands. Heard something about a quarantine downtown, but it cut out." He shook his head. "Probably nothing, just follow standard procedure." Standard procedure. That was the zoo's mantra. Everything had a protocol, a checklist, a failsafe. We drilled for escaped animals, severe weather, even active shooters. Though that last one always felt abstract, unreal. Nothing prepared us for what was actually coming. The first real sign something was fundamentally wrong happened around 9:30 a.m. I was hosing down the concrete pathways near the African savanna exhibit. Zebras and giraffes munching peacefully. In the distance, when I heard shouting near the main entrance. Not angry shouting, but panicked. A woman screamed, a high, piercing sound that cut through the normal morning sounds of squawking birds and distant traffic. I dropped the hose and ran towards the noise, my gut tightening. Near the ticket booths, chaos was erupting. A small crowd had gathered, backing away from something on the ground. A man lay thrashing near the turnstiles, convulsing violently. 2 security guards, not Ben's usual guys but the part-timers who handled the gates, were trying to restrain him. But he fought with unnatural strength, guttural noises ripping from his throat. Another man, maybe a bystander who'd tried to help, sat nearby, clutching his arm, blood welling up between his fingers. He'd been bitten. "What happened?" I asked one of the ticket sellers, a college kid named Maya, who looked like she was about to throw up. "He just attacked him," she stammered, pointing at the bitten man. "Came running up to the gate, looked sick, then just lunged, bit him right on the arm." The man on the ground stopped convulsing. For a moment he lay still. Then his head snapped up. His eyes, they weren't right. Milky, vacant, but with a terrifying, predatory focus. He scrambled to his feet with jerky, uncoordinated movements, ignoring the guards, and launched himself at the nearest person, Maya. Instinct took over. I tackled him, hitting the ground hard. He felt wrong, unnaturally strong, and weirdly cold despite the morning sun. He twisted, mouth gaping, teeth gnashing, trying to bite me. That smell hit me then, overpowering, coppery and rotten, like spoiled meat left in the sun. One of the guards finally managed to pull him off, wrestling him back to the ground. The bitten man was starting to look pale, sweating profusely. Ben arrived, siren blaring on his cart. He took one look at the scene, at the thrashing man, at the bite victim, and his face went pale under his tan. "Lockdown," he barked into his radio. "Initiate full park lockdown. Code red. No one in, no one out. All staff to secure locations." He knelt beside the bitten man. "How long ago?" "Maybe 5 minutes," the man groaned, clutching his arm. Ben looked at the thrashing attacker, then back at the bite wound. His eyes held a dawning horror I recognized from news reports about rabid animals. But this was worse, faster. "Get him to the vet clinic," he ordered the guards, pointing at the bitten man. "Isolate him. Full biohazard protocols. Leo, with me." We helped the bitten man onto Ben's cart, his breathing already becoming shallow. The attacker was still fighting the guards, making those horrible, wet, gurgling sounds. As we pulled away, heading towards the clinic on the far side of the E. So I saw more commotion near the parking lot. Another figure stumbling erratically. More screams. The sirens from the city weren't distant anymore. They were getting closer. The world outside the zoo walls was falling apart, and it was starting to seep inside. The vet clinic felt like the only sane place left in the zoo. All sterile surfaces and quiet efficiency, but the tension was thick enough to choke on. Dr. Evans, our head veterinarian, was examining the bitten man, whose name we learned was Gary, a regular zoo visitor. Gary was shivering uncontrollably now, his skin clammy, pupils dilating. "Never seen anything progress this fast," Dr. Evans muttered, checking Gary's vitals. Temperatures spiking, heart rates erratic. Ben stood by the door, radio pressed. To his ear, listening to the chaotic chatter from other park sections. "Multiple incidents reported," he relayed grimly. "Another biting near the rainforest pavilion. Security team engaged an aggressive individual near the food court. Shots fired." He swore under his breath. "Lost contact with Miller's team." Sarah arrived, her face pale. "What is this, Ben? What's happening?" "Don't know," Ben admitted. A rare crack in his composure. "But it's spreading. Lockdown is holding for now, but we've got reports of changes in some of the staff who were exposed earlier." Changes. The word hung heavy in the air. We all knew what it implied. Gary started moaning, a low, guttural sound. His eyes rolled back in his head, and his body began to seize, much more violently than the man at the gate. "Sedate him, doctor," Evans ordered her assistant, preparing a syringe. But before she could administer it, Gary's seizure stopped abruptly. He lay still, unnervingly so. His chest wasn't moving. He's gone," the assistant whispered, checking for a pulse. "Doctor." Evans shone a light in his eyes. No response. "Time of death," she started, checking her watch, but Ben held up a hand. "Wait." We watched Gary's still form. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Then his fingers twitched. His head lolled to the side. A low growl rumbled. In his chest and his eyes snapped open. They were milky white, pupils gone, replaced by that same terrifying, empty focus. He wasn't Gary anymore. "Secure him," Ben yelled, drawing his sidearm. But the thing that was, Gary moved with shocking speed, lunging off the examination table towards the nearest person, Dr. Evans's assistant. Sarah screamed and shoved the assistant back as Ben fired. 2 shots hit center mass, staggering the creature but not stopping it. It kept coming, arms outstretched, mouth open in a silent snarl. Ben fired again, aiming higher. The head shot connected with a sickening crack, and the creature dropped, finally still. Silence descended, broken, only by our ragged breathing and the distant, chaotic sounds from outside the clinic. We stared at the body on the floor, the reality crashing down on us. This wasn't a flu, wasn't rabies. This was something else, something out of a nightmare. "It spreads after death too," Sarah stated, her voice shaking but analytical. "The man at the gate, he was alive when he attacked. Gary was clinically dead before he reanimated. So it's bites, blood, any fluid contact probably," Ben deduced, reloading his weapon. And head trauma is the only way to stop them. Zombies, I said, the word tasting like ash. They're actually zombies. Ben didn't argue. He checked the clinic's reinforced doors, designed to keep large animals contained if necessary during treatment. We're secure here for now, but we need intel. Leo, see if you can get that shortwave in the back office working. Sarah, inventory medical supplies. Anything useful. Antibiotics, painkillers, trauma kits. As I worked on the radio, trying to find a clear frequency amidst the static and fragmented emergency calls, a new sound reached us from outside. Not human screams or sirens, but something deeper, more guttural. Animal sounds, but wrong. The lions were roaring, not their usual territorial calls, but frantic, pained bellows. The monkeys in the primate house screeched with an intensity that bordered on terror. Then came a sound that chilled me more than anything else, the trumpeting of an elephant, cut short by a wet, tearing noise. What about the animals? Sarah asked, her voice tight with fear for her charges. Ben looked grim. If this thing affects humans this way, he didn't need to finish the thought. A zoo full of infected animals was a terrifying prospect. Lions, tigers, bears. Oh my God. We weren't just trapped in a zoo during a zombie outbreak. We were trapped in a potential death cage of infected apex predators. The shortwave radio crackled, and a voice clearer than the others broke through the static. Repeat. CDC confirms citywide outbreak. Pathogen designated ZX strain. Highly contagious. Via fluidic transfer. Reanimation occurs minutes after host death. Military establishing quarantine perimeter. No extraction available for non-essential personnel. The signal faded again. ZX strain. They'd named it. That somehow made it worse, more real. So, we're on our own, Sarah stated flatly. Looks that way, Ben confirmed. Priority 1, secure this location. Priority 2, assess the animal situation. Priority 3, find a way out. A frantic banging started on the clinic's heavy steel door. Let us in, please, they're everywhere. A voice screamed from outside. Ben motioned for us to stay back, approaching the reinforced peephole cautiously. He peered through, then stepped back quickly, his face pale. Don't open it, he ordered. It's Peterson in from the reptile house. What's wrong with him? I asked. He's got no eyes, Ben said grimly. And he's trying to bite the door. The banging intensified, accompanied by wet, snarling sounds. Whatever was happening outside, it was getting worse. And the animals, the thought of what might be happening in those enclosures made the secure clinic feel terrifyingly small. The banging on the clinic door continued relentlessly for almost an hour, accompanied by those awful wet snarls. Peterson, or what was left of him, wasn't giving up. Inside, the three of us worked with grim determination. Sarah organized the medical supplies, creating trauma kits and sorting medications. Ben established contact with a few other pockets of survivors within the zoo via the internal radio system. A handful of keepers holed up in the commissary, 2 security guards trapped in the North Gate booth. Their reports painted a bleak picture. Infected staff and visitors roaming the park, sporadic gunfire, and increasingly strange behavior from the animals. Rhino enclosure breached, one of the guards reported, his voice tight with panic. Something broke the fence from the inside. Can't see what it is, but it ain't normal. Primate house is quiet, came another voice, likely one of Sarah's team. Too quiet, the chimps. They're just sitting there, staring. Haven't moved in an hour. That report worried Sarah more than the breached rhino fence. Catatonia isn't normal chimp behavior, especially under stress, she murmured, pacing the small clinic space. Unless the virus affects different species differently. Neurological symptoms first? Ben was focused on the main threat. We need weapons. This clinic has tranquilizer guns, scalpels. Not enough against those things. He eyed the cabinets. What about the capture equipment? Net guns? Taser poles? Might slow them down, Dr. Evans's assistant Maria chimed in timidly. She'd been mostly silent since witnessing Gary turn, but that thing that was Gary, it didn't seem to feel pain. The banging outside finally stopped. An unsettling silence fell, broken only by the distant animal sounds, which had also changed. The frantic roaring and screeching had subsided, replaced by lower guttural noises, occasional coughs, and a strange rhythmic clicking sound coming from the direction of the aviary. Recon, Ben decided. Leo, you know the service tunnels better than anyone. There's an access point behind this building. See if you can get eyes on the main pathways, assess the number of infected, maybe reach the security armory. Alone? I asked, the thought making my blood run cold. You're faster, quieter, Ben reasoned. Take a radio, tranquilizer pistol just in case. Stick to the tunnels, avoid open areas. Report back in 30 minutes. If we don't hear from you, we assume the worst. Sarah handed me a small kit. Basic first aid, protein bars, water filter, and this. She pressed a heavy-duty flashlight into my hand. It's got a strobe function. Might disorient them if you get cornered. The service tunnel entrance was hidden behind overgrown bushes near the clinic's waste disposal unit. The heavy metal cover groaned as I lifted it, revealing a dark, narrow shaft descending into the earth. The air that rose to meet me was cool and damp, carrying the familiar zoo smells of earth, animal dung, and disinfectant, but now overlaid with that coppery tang of decay. Radio check every 5 minutes, Ben instructed through the radio clipped to my vest. Stay sharp. Descending the ladder, I pulled the cover closed above me, plunging myself into near total darkness. My flashlight beam cut a small circle through the gloom, revealing a concrete tunnel barely tall enough to stand upright in. Pipes ran along the walls, dripping moisture. These tunnels crisscrossed beneath the entire zoo, used by maintenance and keepers to move supplies and access enclosures without disturbing the public. I knew them well, but they'd never felt this menacing. Every sound was amplified down here. My own footsteps, the drip of water, the scuttling of unseen things in the darkness. I moved cautiously, the tranquilizer pistol feeling woefully inadequate. It was designed for agitated deer, not reanimated corpses. Radio check 1, I whispered. To the mic. Acknowledged, Ben's voice crackled back. Anything? Clear so far. Making my way towards the central hub. The tunnels branched and intersected. I navigated by memory, visualizing the zoo map above ground. Left turn towards the primate house, right towards the big cats. Straight ahead led to the central plaza and hopefully the security office, where the main armory was located. A low growl echoed from the direction of the big cat tunnel. It wasn't the usual territorial roar of a lion or tiger. It was wet, ragged, ending in a choking cough. I froze, heart pounding. Were the animals already infected? Could the virus cross the species barrier that easily? I decided against investigating, sticking to my route towards the central hub. As I moved, I passed beneath ventilation grates that offered glimpses of the park above. Through one, I saw the main pathway near the flamingo pond, empty, except for a lone figure stumbling near the water's edge. A zookeeper uniform, torn and blood-stained. They weren't heading anywhere, just wandering aimlessly until a flock of startled birds took flight. The infected keeper's head snapped, up, and it began sprinting towards the aviary with that terrifying, unnatural speed. Radio check 2, still clear in the tunnels but seeing infected topside. One heading towards the aviary. Copy that, Ben replied. Keep moving. I reached the central hub, a larger junction where several tunnels converged. An access ladder here led up directly behind the main administrative building, adjacent to the security office. Before climbing, I did a quick sweep of the junction with my flashlight. That's when I saw them. Huddled in the darkness at the end of a service spur were two figures. Kids, maybe 10 or 12 years old, clutching each other, eyes wide with terror in my flashlight beam. Hey, I whispered, approaching slowly, keeping my light pointed slightly away from their faces. It's okay, I'm Leo, I work here. Are you alone? The older one, a boy, nodded mutely, pulling his younger sister closer. "We hid," he stammered, "during the field trip, when the screaming started." A school field trip. Oh God. How many others hadn't found a hiding place? "We need to get you somewhere safe," I said. "There are other survivors." Suddenly, a noise from the ladder shaft above us, scraping sounds. Something was trying to get down. "Quick," I urged the kids, pointing back the way I came. "Go down that tunnel, take the second right, it leads towards the vet clinic. Tell them Leo sent you. Run." They hesitated for only a second before scrambling into the darkness. I turned, my attention to the ladder shaft. The scraping intensified, accompanied by low moans. I couldn't risk whatever was up there following the kids. I needed to draw it towards me, towards the security office. "Ben, Sarah," I spoke into the radio, keeping my voice low but urgent. "Found survivors, 2 children, sent them your way. I've got company at the central hub access ladder. Going to try and reach the armory. Wish me luck." "Negative, Leo." Ben's voice was sharp. "Fall back. Do not engage." But it was too late. A shape appeared at the top of the shaft, silhouetted against the dim light filtering from above. It started descending, clumsy but determined. I backed away, raising the tranquilizer pistol, knowing it wouldn't do much. The figure dropped the last few feet, landing with a wet thud. It was one of the gate guards, the same one who'd helped restrain the first attacker hours ago. His eyes were milky white, jaw hanging slack, uniform torn and stained. He saw me, let out a gurgling roar, and charged. The tranquilizer dart hit him square in the chest. He didn't even flinch. I backpedaled, fumbling for the flashlight strobe function Sarah had mentioned. The rapid flashing burst seemed to confuse him momentarily, his head twitching erratically. It bought me a precious second to turn and sprint towards the security office ladder. I scrambled up, pulling myself into the darkened security monitoring room. Monitors lined the walls, most displaying static, but a few still showed distorted feeds from cameras that hadn't been destroyed. Flickering images of empty pathways, overturned trash cans, and occasionally, a stumbling, infected figure crossing the frame. The main door to the office was reinforced steel. I slammed it shut just as the infected guard reached the top of the ladder, his body thudding against the metal. I threw the bolts, cold pounding. Safe, for now. The armory was adjacent, connected by a heavy internal door. It required Ben's code, which he'd thankfully shared over the radio earlier during the initial lockdown. Inside, racks of shotguns, rifles, sidearms, and ammunition lined the walls. Body armor hung on hooks. It was a prepper's dream, or in this case, a survivor's necessity. I grabbed a pump-action shotgun, checking the load, and stuffed my pockets with shells, extra magazines for my Glock, a heavier tactical vest to replace my standard zoo issue. As I geared up, my eyes fell on a specific locker labeled Animal Control, Lethal Measures. Inside were high-caliber tranquilizer rifles, the kind used for rhinos and elephants, but also something else. Explosive charges designed for emergency euthanasia of large, dangerous animals. A last resort protocol. The infected guard was still, pounding on the outer door, the metal groaning under the assault. I had weapons now, but I was alone, cut off from the others, and the zoo was crawling with things that wouldn't stay dead. Checking the remaining active cameras, I tried to map a route back to the clinic. The main pathways were thick with infected, drawn towards the sounds of the earlier commotion near the central plaza. But the service road behind the big cat enclosures looked relatively clear. Risky, but maybe my only option. Just as I was about to leave, one of the monitors flickered, showing a grainy feed from inside the lion enclosure. The pride was huddled together, but not resting. They were agitated, pacing, roaring low in their chests. Then one of the lionesses stumbled, collapsing onto her side. She began to convulse, just like Gary had. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just the staff and visitors. It wasn't just Peterson from the reptile house. The ZX strain was crossing species. The nightmare had just found teeth and claws. Armed and armored, I felt marginally safer, but the image of the convulsing lioness burned in my mind. Exiting the security office back into the service tunnels felt like stepping into a predator's den. The pounding on the door had stopped, which was somehow more unnerving. Had the infected guard given up, or simply wandered off? Or was it waiting? I moved cautiously towards the tunnel that ran behind the big cat enclosures. This route would take me past the lions, tigers, and leopards. Usually the sounds filtering through the ventilation grates were roars, growls, the occasional chuff. Now it was disturbingly quiet, except for intermittent wet coughing sounds and something that sounded like claws scraping against concrete. "Radio check 3, I whispered. Static answered. The tunnels must be blocking the signal more effectively. Here, I was truly alone. Peeking through a grate near the lion house, I scanned the outdoor enclosure. Most of the pride was out of sight, likely inside their dens, but one large male stood near the fence, staring blankly at the empty visitor path. His fur was matted, saliva dripped from his slack jaw, and his breathing was shallow and ragged. He didn't look aggressive, more vacant, confused. Was this an earlier stage of the infection? Or did it manifest differently in large predators? I didn't wait to find out. Further down, near the tiger enclosure, the smell of decay was stronger. Through the grate, I saw one of the tigers lying still near the moat, its striped coat dull, attracting flies. Another paced erratically along the back wall, bumping into rocks, seemingly unaware of its surroundings. This was bad. If even one of these infected predators got loose. I reached the tunnel section closest to the vet clinic. Another access. Ladder led up to a storage shed nearby. Before climbing, I listened intently. Silence. Carefully, I ascended, pushing the hatch cover open slowly. Daylight, fading now into late afternoon, streamed in. The air smelled cleaner here, less like decay, more like hay and disinfectant from the clinic. I emerged into the shed, shotgun ready, empty. The clinic was just 50 yards away across a service path. I could see the main building. Doors still, secure. I keyed the radio. "Ben, Sarah, Maria, this is Leo. Do you copy?" Static, then faintly, Sarah's voice. "Leo, where are you? Are you okay?" "At the storage shed near the clinic," I replied, relief washing over me. "Got weapons from the armory. How are the kids?" "They made it." "Scared, but okay," Sarah confirmed. "But Leo, things are getting worse out here. We're hearing noises from the roof." As she spoke, a shadow passed over the shed. I looked up through a grimy window just in time to see something land on the clinic roof. It wasn't a bird. It was too large, too agile. It moved on all fours, hunched and fast, a primate. A chimpanzee, maybe? But its movements were wrong, jerky, like the infected humans. "Sarah, get away from the windows," I yelled into the radio, sprinting towards the clinic. "Something's on your roof, looks infected." I heard muffled shouts through the clinic door as I reached it, pounding my fist. "It's Leo, let me in." Bolts scraped and the door cracked open. Ben pulled me inside, his face grim. "What did you see?" "Primate," I gasped, catching my breath. "Moving fast. Looked like one of the infected." Sarah paled. "The chimps, the ones who were catatonic." A loud crash came from the roof, followed by the sound of metal tearing. "It's trying to get through the vents," Maria cried out. Ben checked the load in his shotgun. "We can't stay here. If one got out, others might have too. Primates are smart, agile. They can get places the other infected can't." "Where do we go?" Sarah asked, grabbing a medical bag. "The tunnels?" "Too dangerous now," I said. "We don't know what else is down there. What about the rainforest pavilion? It's got reinforced glass, secure access points. It was on the opposite side of the zoo. A long way to travel through potentially hostile territory." "It's our best shot," Ben agreed. "Gather the kids. Essential supplies only. We move now, fast and quiet." The two children, huddled together, In a corner, looked terrified but brave. The boy, maybe 12, clutched a small zoo map. The girl, younger, held tightly to a stuffed giraffe. "Stay close to me," Sarah told them gently. "Hold hands. We'll be okay." We prepared to exit, weapons ready. Ben took point, shotgun raised. Sarah stayed with the kids and Maria. I brought the rear. As Ben cracked the door, the sounds from the roof intensified. Whatever was up there was getting frantic. "Go," Ben ordered. We slipped out into the fading light. The pathway towards the main zoo area seemed clear initially. We moved quickly, sticking close to buildings, using landscaping for cover. The distant sounds of the infected seemed momentarily farther away. We passed the empty flamingo pond, the water stained pinkish-brown. We skirted the savannah exhibit. The zebras and giraffes were gone. The large gates to their enclosure bent outward as if something massive had forced its way through. As we neared the primate house, the silence Sarah had reported earlier was broken. Low moans and guttural clicks echoed from within. Through the thick viewing glass, we could see shapes moving in the dim interior. Chimpanzees, orangutans, gorillas. Some were still, catatonic like Sarah's team had reported. Others moved with that horrifying, jerky aggression, throwing themselves against the bars, their eyes milky white. One large silverback gorilla sat slumped against the wall, its massive chest still, but its head twitched almost imperceptibly. "Keep moving," Sarah urged, her voice thick with emotion as she averted her eyes from her former charges. We were halfway to the rainforest pavilion when we encountered them. A group of infected humans, maybe 10 or 15, emerged from the direction of the food court, drawn perhaps by our movement or scent. They spotted us immediately and charged. "Contact!" Ben yelled, opening fire. We formed a defensive semicircle, Sarah pulling the kids and Maria behind us. The infected came on relentlessly, ignoring the shotgun blasts that tore through them. Headshots, only headshots worked. I dropped 2, then a third that got too close. Ben was firing methodically, taking them down one by one. But there were too many. They were going to overwhelm us. Suddenly, a roar erupted from our flank. Not an infected roar, but the full-throated sound of an angry, healthy lion. One of the zoo's males burst from behind the reptile house, charging not at us, but at the infected. It slammed into the group, teeth and claws tearing through decaying flesh. The infected barely reacted, turning their mindless aggression on the new threat, swarming the lion. "Now!" Ben shouted, seizing the distraction. "Run for the pavilion!" We sprinted, leaving the lion to its gruesome fate, a sacrifice that had bought us precious seconds. The rainforest pavilion loomed ahead, its domed glass roof reflecting the dying sunlight. We reached the service entrance, Ben using his master key card just as the first pursuing infected rounded the corner. We tumbled, inside slamming and bolting the heavy door behind us. We were inside the pavilion, momentarily safe. But the sounds from outside told us the horde was gathering. And worse, as we looked around the humid, plant-filled interior, we realized we weren't alone. High in the artificial canopy, small shapes moved through the foliage. Monkeys. Howler. Monkeys? Usually noisy and vibrant, now silent, their eyes glowing faintly red in the dim light. They watched us, not with fear or curiosity, but with that same empty, predatory gaze. The infection wasn't just outside, it was in here with us. The rainforest pavilion, usually filled with the sounds of waterfalls and exotic birds, was deathly, quiet except for the rustling high above and the muffled snarls of the infected pounding on the exterior doors. The air was thick and humid, smelling of damp earth and blooming flowers, a grotesque contrast to the encroaching horror. "Upstairs," Ben directed, pointing towards the staff access stairs leading to the catwalks and control room above the main exhibit floor. "Better vantage point, more defensible." We climbed quickly, Sarah keeping the terrified children close. Maria, the vet assistant, clutched a tranquilizer rifle she'd grabbed from the clinic, though we all knew it was likely useless. From the catwalk, We looked down onto the simulated rainforest floor. Below us, the infected monkeys continued to watch, their movements becoming slightly more agitated, heads twitching. "They're infected, but acting differently," Sarah observed, her voice low. "Not immediately aggressive like the primates we saw earlier. More waiting." "Waiting for what?" I asked, scanning the dense foliage below for other threats. The control room was small, cramped, but offered panoramic views of the pavilion interior and the pathways outside through reinforced windows. Ben checked the security panel. "Internal doors are secure. External doors, they won't hold forever against that many." He pointed to a monitor showing the main entrance. The horde outside had grown, dozens of infected humans slamming against the glass and steel, their combined weight making the structure groan. "Any communication?" I asked, checking my own dead radio. Ben shook his head. "Nothing, we're cut off." "What do we do?" Maria asked, her voice trembling. "We can't stay here." "We hold until dark," Ben decided. "Their activity might decrease at night. We saw with the Whitakers," he added, referring to the farmer's report. "Then we try to make it to the service exit on the north side. Leads back towards the tunnels, but maybe a section further from the main outbreak." It was a flimsy plan, but it was the only one we had. The hours crawled by. Outside, the pounding continued. Inside, the infected monkeys grew bolder, descending from the canopy, moving along the railings of the lower pathways, their red eyes tracking our movements in the control room. They didn't attack, just watched, their silence more unnerving than aggression. The little girl, whose name I learned was Lily, started crying softly. Her brother Sam put a protective arm around her. "It's okay," he whispered, though his own eyes were wide with fear. "Leo and the others will protect us." I felt a pang of responsibility heavier than my tactical vest. As dusk settled, painting the glass dome in shades of orange and purple, a new sound joined the cacophony outside. A heavy, rhythmic thudding against the pavilion's main support. "Pillars?" "What is that?" Sarah asked, peering through the windows. Ben focused his binoculars. His breath hitched. "Oh, hell, it's the rhino." Through the magnified view I saw it. One of the zoo's massive white rhinos, the one whose enclosure had been breached, was repeatedly ramming its head against the building's supports. Its eyes were clouded white. Thick strands of saliva dripped from its mouth, and patches of its thick hide were torn and bloody, likely from forcing its way through the fence. It seemed oblivious to pain, focused only on destruction. "That reinforced glass won't stop something that size," Ben stated grimly. "Not for long." The thudding continued, each impact shaking the structure. Cracks began to appear in the concrete. Pillars. Inside, the monkeys became agitated, screeching and chittering, dropping lower, closer to the control room level. "They're reacting to it," Sarah noted. "Maybe coordinating?" "Doesn't matter," Ben said, checking his shotgun. "We need to move, now. Forget waiting for dark." Our escape route was blocked. The stairs leading down were now occupied by the infected monkeys, chattering aggressively, baring their teeth. The rhythmic ramming of the rhino grew louder, more insistent. Cracks spiderwebbed across the control room windows. The emergency ladder, I remembered, in the maintenance closet, leads directly down to the filtration system tunnels beneath the pavilion. We found the closet, Ben forcing the lock. A narrow metal ladder descended into darkness. "Okay, new plan," he said quickly. "Kids first, then Maria, Sarah, Leo. I'll cover the rear. Move!" Lily hesitated at the dark opening, but Sam gently urged her forward. One by one, we descended into the cramped, damp space below. The air smelled strongly of chlorine and stagnant water. Ben came last, pulling the trapdoor shut just as something heavy slammed against it from above. We were in another network of tunnels, smaller and more confusing than the main service routes. These were for water pipes and filtration access. We moved by flashlight beam, water swirling around our ankles. "Which way?" Sarah asked, trying to orient herself. "Follow the main outflow pipe," I guessed. should lead towards the zoo's perimeter. Drainage? We sloshed through the darkness, the only sounds our splashing footsteps and the distant, muffled thudding of the rhino, which seemed to be getting closer again, as if it sensed our movement underground. After what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened into a larger concrete chamber. A storm drain outlet barred by a heavy metal grate offered a glimpse of the outside world, the edge of the zoo's property, bordering a dense patch of woodland. Freedom was tantalizingly close. The grates bolted from the outside, Ben reported, examining the rusted metal. We'll have to cut it. He pulled a portable cutting torch from his tactical bag, a tool usually reserved for breaching heavy doors. As the torch flared to life, showering sparks into the darkness, a low growl echoed from deeper within the drainage tunnel behind us. My light swung around. 2 pairs of red eyes glowed in the darkness, low to the ground. Then more appeared. Jackals. The zoo had a small pack, usually timid and nocturnal. Now they moved with unnatural coordination, slinking forward, lips curled back in silent snarls, their fur matted and patchy. They were infected. "Behind us!" I yelled. Ben worked, frantically on the grate bolts while Sarah, Maria, and I formed a defensive line, weapons aimed into the darkness. The jackals advanced slowly, cautiously, testing us. They weren't charging mindlessly like the human infected. Some predatory instinct remained. "Almost there," Ben grunted, sparks flying as he cut through the last bolt. The jackals chose that moment to attack, launching themselves forward as a silent, coordinated pack. I fired the shotgun, the blast echoing thunderously. One went down. Sarah fired the tranquilizer rifle, useless as expected. Maria screamed as one leaped towards her. Ben dropped the torch, drew his sidearm, and fired rapidly, dropping 2. Ordeos, I racked the shotgun, firing again, catching another jackal mid-leap, but one slipped past, heading straight for the children. Sarah threw herself in front of them, swinging the empty tranquilizer rifle like a club. The jackal latched onto her arm, teeth sinking deep. She cried out in pain, but didn't release her grip on the rifle, bringing it down hard on the creature's skull. It collapsed, but the damage was done. "Get the grate!" Ben yelled, pulling Sarah back as he finished off the last jackal. I heaved the heavy metal grate aside, revealing the muddy embankment leading down to the woods outside the zoo perimeter. "Go! Go now!" Sam pulled Lily through the opening. Maria scrambled after them. Ben half-carried, half-dragged Sarah towards the exit, her face pale, blood streaming down her arm. I covered their retreat, scanning the dark tunnel. More red eyes were appearing in the distance. We tumbled out onto the muddy bank, the cool night air a shocking contrast to the tunnels. Behind us, the zoo was a landscape of chaos. Distant fires, muffled screams, and the relentless thudding of the infected rhino, which had finally broken through the pavilion wall. "We have to keep moving," Ben urged, tearing strips from his shirt to create a makeshift tourniquet for Sarah's arm. She watched him, her eyes filled with a terrible understanding. "How long?" she asked quietly. "Maybe 30 minutes," Ben replied grimly, avoiding her gaze. We staggered into the woods, leaving Oak Creek Wildlife Park and the nightmare within its walls behind us. The city glowed unnaturally on the horizon. We had survived the first 12 hours, escaped the immediate danger, but we were injured, exhausted and lost in a world overrun by the dead. Sarah's bite was a ticking clock, a reminder that survival was measured in minutes, not days. As we pushed deeper into the darkness, the only certainty was that the fight was far from over. The zoo was just the beginning.